What's happening? You got the vid?
Yeah, mate, I got it. Finally got it. Made its way into the Dale Street household.
Mm.
It's here.
Yeah. So how many more days of ISO have you got?
Thursday's my last day, so we tested day three, all of us, and still positive.
Mm.
And then I've testing every day just 'cause I want to know kind of when it goes away. But we have to test on day seven, and then allowed back at work on day eight, which is Friday. So for me, it's kind of worked out all right. I only technically have ended up missing 3 days of work, so
Mm.
not a real big issue there. And yeah, the others are the weird thing is Maddie's still my partner's still testing negative, which is just random.
Really? That's so
Uh,
strange.
yeah, she is the only one who's got a booster though at the
Oh,
moment, so
really?
I'm wondering if that maybe it is actually good for you.
Yeah. I've actually got something quite good to start, so I'm going to share my screen. Can you see this?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah. So I just thought this was a real interesting post, and I'd be interested to see what you think and how you're going to find it. So essentially, this post, quite a few people I've just seen sharing it, and it's from RE News, which I'm not sure if they're like a government news like outlet or what, but they've essentially put up this post saying rushing back to exercise can cause long COVID. Um, so basically, they're saying that if I swipe through, you pretty much need to have no symptoms before you start exercising again, because where does it say?
You need to swipe over to something else. I've got your unbroken screen on one.
Oh yeah. Oh, can you not see that?
No, I've just got the unbroken logo.
Okay.
You know the article you're talking about though. This is,
Yeah, I just there's a bit where it says um, about essentially, um, yeah. So the doctor is Dr. Anna Brooks, and she just says, while the triggers of long COVID are not completely understood, the onset is likely due to direct viral infection of cells and persistent inflammation in the body that can be caused by incomplete clearance of the virus. So essentially, um, there's like the element of inflammation there, um, and the body not completely clearing the virus, and they're saying that if you exercise too soon, that's gonna essentially cause that and stop the process of your body clearing the virus. But the only thing about that is obviously is everything is I'll stop sharing my screen. Everything is about context. Can you see me again now?
yeah, right, yeah.
But essentially, what do you think about that? Because to me, through this whole thing, everyone's just obviously become way more sedentary, and also when people become more sedentary, often their quality of eating decreases, um, and stress level increases because they might be like waiting for a subsidy or not getting paid, so their stress is increased. And so I'm just wondering, is the biggest concern really with getting long COVID or even just recovering from COVID, um, is exercise really like the biggest factor you want to be worrying about?
Yeah, that's my flatmate says a positive on Thursday, and I was at work, and obviously got the gym at work, and so first thing I did was I rushed and grabbed a couple of kettlebells and some dumbbells and stuff, and
Mm,
headed into my car. I was like, sweet, I can work out for a week, and then I read that article on Thursday night, and yeah, kind of looked into a little bit more, and I think the biggest thing is probably this, because if you the article obviously just targeting young people,
mm,
and I mean, shit, it was Sunday and I felt good. Like I feel 100% now, and I'm day four or whatever it is, um, and feel fully fine to work out. But it's more just I think that element of actually giving our bodies a chance to recover, because we don't, even though I know I only had a bit of a cough or whatever it was, I think there's still probably we don't know exactly probably enough about COVID to understand what it's doing to our body. And there's so many different stories, like especially when you work in a workplace like mine, where you got all these different people who are catching it at the moment, and you hear so many different stories. And then it's also just, I think, it comes down to workout intensity. So like
Yeah.
I've been working out every day with COVID technically because I've been getting on the bike for my hip, and I've been spinning and just doing my hip stuff, which isn't high intensity exercise. However, on day 2, I'd gone into the shed and I'd smashed out a 45-minute workout with kettlebells, and I'd be doing sprint intervals on the bike. That's probably not the best idea, if you know what I mean. But
Yeah. It's like there's a difference between going in and smashing like a high volume, low body session, or going in and like sitting on the bike for 20 minutes and then sauntering for 10 minutes or whatever, you know?
yeah, exactly. We've actually got a really interesting case at the moment with one of our athletes at school, who's got a history of training really, really hard. Like he's arguably probably our best at like training athlete in the school. But he has these massive crashes where he just like fatigues and his immune system almost shuts off after a period of high intensity training. And so it happened again about 2 weeks ago. So we went and got him sent away for some bloods. It turns out he's got glandular fever.
Oh,
So
really?
our next step from here is kind of thinking, well, geez, we've got to start managing his training loads. And he's probably not a guy who can actually, moving forward for now, he's probably not a guy we can actually afford to train at a really high intensity for long amounts of time because his body's got to recover. Like we've got to do something to help him recover or deal with that. So yeah, massive just around intensity with COVID. I think like how if you feel good to train, yeah, that's all good, but let's just make sure it is.
The only thing I think as well, like, everyone's pretty on the same page about that. And even like, I had a guy in my last year at high school had a glandular fever, and he was pretty much out of school for 9 months of the year because he was so run down. But then the only thing is in this article, it says when it comes to knowing how long you should wait before exercising, Brooks, who's the doctor, says there is no magic answer or period of time. But then it says in quotation marks, the only thing I can suggest is only consider exercising when there is literally no sign of any symptom. I'm talking when you feel 100% back to normal. Which that's where it starts to get grey for me because like a lot of people, especially like general public or just the general person, like if you have no like symptoms could be like muscle soreness, you know, or like achiness. And it's like, this is a problem to me with the article and this is what I'm trying to point out, is we're all on the same page about being cautious getting back into exercise after having COVID or glandular fever or any other illness. But when you are telling young people, don't go back to exercise until literally there's no sign of any symptom. You know?
Yeah, you definitely, like I said, I think the people with grey area, like for example, I interpret it I've kind of got a sniffly nose, but also I've got sinuses. I like sinus problems anyway. So like at the moment, I feel 100%. But with this, I don't know if this is a symptom or not. Like my energy levels are fine today, and like I feel normal. But for all I know, I could still have like a bit of an internal symptom going on that I haven't picked up on, or I know it's a tricky one. And also I think young people being young people, they're gonna test it out for themselves anyway. And some people are gonna end up probably getting long COVID, and some people aren't. Like it's probably just the reality a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's just the whole time this has been going on, and I won't harp on about this particular thing too much, but at no point has there really been any narrative about improving your immune system through exercise, good eating, managing your stress, all those real basic things. And that's kind of fine because the priority might have been just people's safety. But then coming out of it, I think when you're encouraging people to be even more sedentary and less active until they've got zero symptoms, it's just a real slippery slope. And it's not even physically either. Like it's regarding people's mental health and their stress management. Like this whole there's just been a lot of like heaviness put into people been more sedentary, less active, less social. And I think at some point the tide's got to turn a little bit, and people have got to start trying to build their immune system, and especially when it seems like it's going to be sticking around. So how have you felt about just obviously your profession and being a teacher, but also like having an exercise science degree, the narrative around the approach with, like, I guess COVID, but even like the boy at school with glandular fever. Do you think like nutrition and exercise has been, and recovery principles have been like put under the rug a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as that word vaccine got dropped, I think everyone was just like, "This is the way," kind of thing. Like, this is how we can best protect ourselves. And I almost look at a vaccine as, while it obviously can be effective, I almost look at it as like how we educate our youth athletes around like protein supplements. Like, it's a supplementation, your ability to improve or grow or develop muscle, whatever. And it's the same as the vaccine. It's like a supplement to improve your ability to deal with infections and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, looking after yourself every single day and putting stuff in your body in terms of what you eat, that is good for you, and that's going to improve your body function. And then exercising and making sure that we get our heart rate up regularly and all that kind of stuff. I like that's your bread and butter, and it's the same thing in the gym, and it's the same thing I think in life in general. Like, if you're getting that stuff right, and then if you supplement, yeah, cool, with the vaccine, or even if you don't, I think you're still in a position to be able to fight infection well. And then at the same time as well, obviously people do have underlying health conditions they don't know about, and when those infections come along, that throws a bit of a spanner in the works. But I think it's just that word, like, preparedness. Like, just like, it's the best way to be prepared, I think, for anything, but especially medical stuff. Like, if you're fueling yourself every day with the right stuff, and you're feeding yourself with the right physical activity, you're giving yourself the best shot. And yeah, some people thought, oh well, I don't have to worry about that because there's a vaccine coming. That's all I need to worry about. So if I'm absolutely overweight, if I'm fat as at the moment and don't do bugger all, then I'm 100% safe because the vaccine's coming. It's just like, well, yes and no. And there's also 100 other things that are probably going to kill you in the end anyway.
So segueing into what you've sort of got going on at the moment, you're obviously teaching in a full-time role at New Plymouth Boys in the PE department, and you're working with the first 15 rugby team doing some S&C sort of stuff. So first thing you can sort of touch on is, because we both went to that school, what's it like being back at the school you went to, but also just like being an adult now and essentially educating and coaching like teenage boys and young men?
So I think the first thing was a lot of staff members at the school, kind of when I applied and actually got the job back there, were just like, why are you coming back here so early? You know, there's so much of a world to go and see out there, and you got to go live, kind of thing. And there were kind of two schools of thought. The first one was, I do want to go and see the world, but at the moment it's shut down, so what's the point? And the second was, and as you know yourself, like, there's a huge amount of people at that school, for a school, that have a lot of experience and knowledge, not just in the teaching industry, but beyond it as well. Like, I'm working along some guys that have been in and out of the S&C industry as a coach themselves, or as a professional athlete themselves, for a really long time, and they've been in different eras as well, and just being a part of different codes and different sports team stuff. And for me, as like a young person entering the S&C industry and entering the teaching industry, I don't think there was probably a better opportunity for me. Like, I get to go in school every day, and you sit down with these staff members who are like in their 40s and in their 50s, and they've just got so much experience where, you know, if I went straight into, say, a club team, or you went straight into an apprenticeship or an internship with a sports club or something, you are quite isolated straight away.
Mm.
And just the environment that I'm in at the moment is just so cool to be able to, just be around those kind of people. And then, the Eastern Sea stuff with the youth athletes, I think that's certainly my current kind of passion. Like the youth athlete, it's that starting product, because when you get into working with the professional athletes as adults, you're getting more of that rounded out product, eh? So working with kids who or starting at the start, where it's about fundamental movement patterns and just getting boys actually like enjoying exercise, and then starting to educate them around what things are going to look like down the track if you do crack it. And there's like, so long-term athlete development theory, that's probably where I'm kind of heading, and especially with my master's stuff as well. That's the area of like I said, passion and interest for me. And the kids are great. Like they just absorb everything you say, because they take everything you say as gold standard. But that's where we've also got to be careful about what you do educate them on, because if you start telling them that this is the only way and this is it, then you limit them so much. So the biggest thing I think for me, being in that environment I'm in, is also being open-minded. And again, the guys I work with, we're always challenging each other. And like, if I say, oh, I want to try this, the first thing someone will say to you is, oh, why? Like, will tell us why, and give us some actual scientific reasoning behind it, or some justification. Don't just come in here and be the young fella and tell us we're going to change this and do that. And I do the same for them too. Like, they've got their old ways that they've been doing for 15, 20 years for some things, and I'll call them out on it, and it's good. It's a really healthy environment.
Yeah, I think as trainers and coaches, that is like, you have to be open minded, because we see it in like more your field, where like S&C trainers, or even like my industry with PTs, how many people just get stuck in their ways. They have this one way, and they'll have a certain type of client, and then they'll take on a client from another sport and just stick to the exact same principles, because that's the only way, and end up like heavily shortchanging the athlete. So I think that's awesome. You've got that environment. The other thing I was really interested on is, what is it like teaching and coaching the same kids? Because there's obviously a bunch of kids that you are a teacher at their high school and also a coach for. Is that challenging, or does it work to your advantage, or I guess from kid to kid it's a bit different?
Oh, it works to your advantage massively, and we're actually seeing something at the moment at school. So our first 15 coaches aren't staff members at the moment, and I think there's just probably a little bit of feeling of disconnect at the moment, because those those coaches aren't at school with the boys, so they don't really get a good look at how those boys are around school. But I mean, geez, you're around your athletes an extra 5 hours a day. And it's becoming more and more prevalent, I guess, like how important coach-athlete relationships are in the professional industry, and just in any successful sporting environment. So it's massive. Like, you do really feel like you know them, and like they're not just a kid that you see at school, or a kid that you turn up to your practice. Like, you end up knowing where they're from, what they get up to in their spare time, and what subjects they're good at, what subjects they're not good at. So you can start having conversations with them around, how to, I guess, improve their performance in those subjects, because like at our school, so for our first teams, they've got to meet certain grade levels and certain engagement grades and stuff to be able to actually represent the school. So you can educate them and help them around those kind of things as well. Massive advantage. And I mean, I don't obviously have a lot of experience not being a coach and a teacher at the same time. But yeah, relationships are pretty solid with these athletes.
So if a boy is like an awesome rugby player, like a stud, turns up to training on time every time, works his ass off, super polite and cordial, but then in the classroom his grades are poor, what is the result of that?
That's certainly something that the school's developed over the last few years. I think you'd know from when we were there, like, that probably wasn't the case.
Guys, people were just there to play rugby, didn't go to class.
And they could get away with that. And then a couple of guys obviously got put into the right position. So David Bullets, as you know, who's our sports director, he's been massive for that. Like he's just so we've got engagement grades at school. So every teacher will give an engagement grade from 1 to 5 for our boys for the week. And they have to have an average, I think it was above a 3 or a 3.5, which is a 3 is good. So it's got to be, they've got to be at least or better than good. They've got to be, engaging regularly, which is essentially what that means. So, and without that, they don't play.
End of story. No ifs or buts.
Yeah, and so there's obviously been some pretty tough conversations with some parents the last few years while this has been implemented, but I think we're kind of at the back of it now where when boys come through Plymouth Boys High School and their parents and stuff sign all the contracts and all that kind of stuff, like they know that this is the standard, this is the expectation. And just the same goes for attendance as well. So if boys decide to, and that was a big issue as well when we were there, boys would just take, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off school, and then next thing they're at Thursday on the bus going to Auckland Grammar to play, kind of thing. So we're pretty stern around that now as well. So if boys aren't turning up to school, then they can't play. And yeah, it's a protocol that we've developed for the last few years, which is kind of starting to just become standard practice.
Has that shifted the culture of the team a little bit? Because I feel like when you develop bad habits in one area, they end up roosting in another area. And as talented as kids can be, and they can get away with it at high school, if they're doing things like skimping on class and their grades, it often transfers to the culture in the team, and often results in, for example, with a lot of team sports, like a big drinking culture, especially that age. So do you think implementing the engagement system where they have to meet the criteria, has that changed the culture on the sports field at all, or not really?
Rugby's heading in the right direction, and I think it's nearly there. There's still a few more kinks we're still trying to work out with our culture around rugby specifically, but in sport and the whole school, I think this shift's been massive. Our first 11 hockey team last year went on a 4-peat for Super 8 title. Which was just mind-blowing, I think, for a smaller school like us in that kind of area. Our football team in last year had 6 or so guys selected in the New Zealand under-17s football squad, where our tennis teams do it. Our sport across the school the last few years is just crazy, and it's all these little things that we're starting to get right. Rugby on a more specific level is certainly a bit of a different beast. We've got a lot of players that we have to manage, and I think as any Kiwi person would know, rugby's got quite a unique cattle that comes with that. So yeah, we're actually literally in the process right now. A lot of people in the school who are involved with rugby or have been involved with rugby in the past and for a very long time. Just a lot of regular meetings going on at the moment, actually starting to look back at, what is the philosophy at Plymouth Boys High School for rugby? What's our mission? What's our goal? What are we trying to achieve? And actually have that written down somewhere and actually know what direction we're trying to head, because we look back and we've never actually had that as a code at Boys High. So, and without that, you kind of got to ask yourself, what have you got? What direction are you giving your athletes and your boys from the moment they step in as a 13-year-old boy? And giving them some guidance all the way through. And the other thing I think with all the engagement grades and all those expectations around that is the reality is we're giving some opportunities. We're trying to give boys opportunities, and the big example is basketball. So nowadays, if you're in New Zealand and you want to make it with basketball, you want to go to the States, you can be the best player in New Zealand, but if you don't have the grades, you're not going to get the scholarship over there. And so we've got to make
the grades back here or perform over there as well, or both, I guess.
Yeah, or both. Yeah, but to actually get the scholarship to go over there, your grades have to be super high. Their standards over there to get into those top div schools are so high.
So they will review your NCEA grades, and it's basically got to be pretty solid across the board.
Oh yeah, it's they do all the grade point average stuff. So achieve merit excellence, I think obviously get awarded a point for whatever it is and stuff like that. And they do all their calculations. And yeah, like if you're not meeting the cut, then it's tough. And I mean, it's all good because you might get chucked into a Div 3 school, but straight away you go over there, you're under the pump a little bit because you're not in those Div 1 or Div 2 schools. So it's so how do I show myself? And so it's just about trying to give guys the best opportunity. And rugby's another classic one. Like, you know, careers are becoming shorter and shorter in rugby. And if we don't get our guys at least, you know, their NCA level 2 and encourage guys to go to university while they kind of try and crack NPC or crack the Super Rugby teams or chip away at a degree, you know, what do we leave them with after sport's done? Like, well, have we actually done our job? Probably not.
So did you say that careers are getting shorter in rugby?
Yeah, especially,
why is that? Because all our, I guess, principles and knowledge around recovery is improving. So why is that because the game's getting faster and more intense? And
yeah, I think there's certainly that aspect of it. Like, you know, especially, I think it's also a little bit position specific. So I think like a front row at the moment or these days, like you can be really patient as a front rower and just be like, oh yeah, I'll keep chipping away here in New Zealand. I'll bide my time, and then, you know, you might crack your Super Rugby team when you're 26 or something, and then that's all good. Where like if you're an outside back, if you haven't been picked up in those kind of, you know, first couple of years, there's always going to be some younger, faster dude who's coming through that Super Rugby team's going to be like, you know, let's sign this dude because this 23, 24-year-old starting to fizzle out already.
Yeah,
you know, slowing down and, you know, stuff like that. So it's brutal, man. And like we've got an old boy at school at the moment who's back teaching, who's kind of been talking about the, you know, trying to crack it himself, and he's just like, yeah, it's you got to be onto it really. And I'm also, you know, you look at how many guys go overseas pretty quickly and tap out because they just want to, obviously they're not going to crack it, so they're like, I'll go and get the money and cash out and then come home and whatever happens after there happens. But yeah, it's certainly shorter, and it's such a professional game nowadays, and you know, teams need to be successful, and if you're not making the cut for the team, then they'll toss you, I guess.
So segueing that into, I guess, how you coach some of these boys or and the first 15 team, how much of your training, like it goes hand in hand a little bit, but how much of the training is tailored to get these boys to have as high of an output as possible, and then how much of it is put into helping them sustain their output and recover, and if they have potential to make it in the sport, have a long career. So essentially, how much of a split is there between making them bigger, faster, stronger, but then also what's the time and effort put into helping them recover, helping them sustain that performance, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So again, that probably comes down to that kind of like that long-term athlete development stuff that I kind of touched on earlier. So we've got a bit of a philosophy at our school or in our S&C centre, and this goes for all our teams, but especially I think our big top 5 codes. So we've got 5-year lifters, so we've got so their training age. So like a year 1 lifter comes into us as a 13-year-old student, and for the whole first year, our job is to make sure that their fundamental movement patterns are sound and that they can control their own body weight. And we do this through all our fundamental movements, so your push-ups, your air squats, a lot of our primal crawls as well, so you know, your bear crawls and all that kind of stuff. Year 2 lifter, they start moving into some kettlebell work, resistance band stuff, and starting to add progressive load kind of through those streams. Year 3 lifter, we start increasing the load on those, and then we actually introduce compound lifting, but only at 40% of their maximum load, purely to lead to technique mastery. And then year 4, that's when we start introducing full loaded compound lifting, introduce some Olympic lifting, and then by year 5, which is a year 13, and through their last year of sport, and then moving into hopefully professional sport, we've got an athlete that's ready to handle the demands of professional sport. And that's not just obviously around their strength stuff, it's around proprioception, it's around their flexibility, their mobility, and making sure that we actually are producing a rounded athlete. So our first thing is making sure our athletes can move at the very start of when they start their journey with us, and then at the end, we've got someone who's got the fundamentals down packed, and we can pass them on to a franchise who can then start doing the really complicated stuff that's technique heavy, or put possibly more strain on the joints and stuff like that.
So someone wouldn't start working in a heavy compound movement with overload until being a year 4 lifter.
Yeah, correct.
Right. So is that literally year by year at your high school? They literally won't be doing any heavy compounds until they're in 6th form or year 12.
Yeah. So
right.
we've got what we call our ADP program at year 9 and 10. So these boys who are in the subject at school, so it's called athlete development and preparation. They have lessons every week in their class during the school day, where they go into the gym and they work with our head strength and conditioning coach Kane Rousen, and they train and develop these things in class time, as well as obviously out time their own training as well. But the thing is, so we're working off training age. So if I have a new student come to Plymouth Boys High School from another school, and he comes and sees me and says, "Hey, can I have a gym program?" My first question is, well, how much lifting have you done already? Like, what have you done from the school you've come at? And if he says nothing and says a year 12, I give him a year 1 lifter program, because I feel like if I just chuck him on a year, just because he's 4 years into high school, if I chuck him on a year 4, I'm going to break him. He's not going to have the movement, and it'd be easy for me to go, yeah, I'll give you what you want. You want to do what all the other year 12s here are doing. But that's just not where you're at.
Would you just progress him a bit faster through the years if you see he was executing that year well?
And that's something that Kane and I are kind of working on at the moment. Is we kind of need a bit of a criteria for some boys. We just need a criteria to be able to tick off what a year 1 lifter is. So if a boy comes to us and says, "Hey, sir, I'm a year 2 lifter now," we can go, "Oh, yeah, cool. Show us this. Yeah, you're good. Cool." And same thing for a year 3 lifter. Can he do these things proficiently? Yeah, he's ready to be a year 4 lifter. But I think the biggest thing is we just don't rush these guys. Again, talking to a guy who's in the professional sport industry at the moment as an athlete himself, he just said there's so many guys who don't bench press and don't squat because they did so much of it and just ruined themselves. And they did because they did it with shit technique, and they overloaded too early. And they just weren't ready for it at a young age. Now they can't do it, and they avoid it now. Where hopefully we're creating athletes. We're creating athletes that go into those professional industries and they can squat and they can bench and they can Olympic lift and they can clean and do all that kind of stuff, and do it for a long time and do it in a really healthy, productive way.
It's so interesting because compared to when I was finishing up at high school, so 2013, 14. What you're talking about now is so far advanced from what was going on then. It's crazy that it's only 7-8 years of, and obviously it's due to a couple guys that have come into the school and really started implementing what they know. But are these sort of practices, is it pretty consistent across the higher tier schools in the country now, or you guys are still obviously there's some big premium schools that are really on the ball with the S&C and coaches and stuff, but across the whole country and a lot of boys schools, do you think because of the people that are coming to your phys ed department and roles within the teams and the coaching staff, you're a little bit ahead of other schools? Because what you're telling me is not what I would assume or have seen going on at for example, schools down in Dunedin.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly, it's one of those things probably, especially in a competitive school environment these days, I've probably got to be careful about what you do share and stuff. And, we've got our little secret herbs and spices and stuff going on behind the scenes. But, because you go around your sport trips and you talk to other coaches and, you look around other schools and, I mean, quietly, I think we're doing a lot of stuff that other schools aren't even crossing their mind, and it's only, I think it's only going to keep growing for us. So we've got guys who are constantly looking and constantly trying different things, and that's just the fun of the industry. Like there's so much stuff out there, and there's so much room for creativity, and because we've got this athlete at this stage, I think it just opens up even more for us compared to having a group of 25-year-olds or mid-20s.
I think what you said before about the athletes that end up, they're not even using those compound lifts, because they did so much of it when they were younger and they butchered the movement because they didn't do them properly. And now because I think those movements, especially in the setting you are with S&C, if they are executed right, they're the movements you're going to get the most bang for buck for if you progressively overload, right? But the thing is the key thing I probably said there is executed like properly or well, and I don't think they're as simple to execute as people kind of assume, especially things like Olympic lifting. Like to me, Olympic lifting is very, very advanced, and this is why not to be negative towards any like subgroup or anything, but with a lot of group training and CrossFit stuff, this is why a lot of people get injured because they've developed no movement patterns whatsoever, and they go in and they start lifting weight overhead with a barbell, but then here you are telling me just for your kids to simply do a compound movement and progressively overload it. It's about 3 years of base training to even get there. But then because this is like they're essentially a lot of them trying to be professional athletes and sustain that, it's better to do the groundwork and then be in a place to utilize that movement to get stronger for your sport rather than just breaking down 5 years into training.
Yeah. Oh, no, exactly. Like, and boys, especially like youth male athletes, like they're in such a rush to get off the bench press because that's what all the big dogs are doing. And you go on the All Black social media page and they put up a post with their gym session and the All Blacks are bench pressing, and like they're just in such a rush. And so I've just like my first team boys are currently on a strength endurance program, and I think that was one I ran by you, and purely just something different I'm trying because I kind of trying to relate it to the game of rugby and what kind of goes on there. And anyway, there's no bench press. The closest thing they get to a bench press, which is or a push movement, which is like a section of the workout, it's a weighted press up. That is the most progressed push exercise can be in that workout. And I've had so many boys come to me and go like, why are we not bench pressing? Why are we not on the bench press? Why are we not dumbbell pressing? And as soon as I explain to them, like, fellas, I'm looking for technique mastery. Like the word, like we use that word mastery because we use it in the classroom as well. So, and I was like, fellas, you can't execute a highly technical movement or what is 15 sets in this program. And I was like, because once fatigue sets in, because you don't have that fatigue resistance, I was like, you're just going to end up hurting yourselves. And I was like, a weighted push-up, where for a lot of you, you've been doing push-ups on rings, on Bosu balls, on med balls, on unbalanced surfaces. You've been doing it for like the last 3 to 4 years. So I think I can load you up in terms of endurance on this exercise like that. And you kind of see light bulbs start to go on some of them, and then you've got the other boys who are just stuck in the mud, and they're just like, "No, bro, get me on the bench press. I don't care what you've done or who you are." It's like, come on, man. It's like just.
I think that though, like, as much as natural talent's important, one of the things I've noticed across all the sports I've watched is the absolute best athletes are the ones that will just do whatever's necessary to be the best athlete at that sport, rather than whatever they like, rather than a kid being like, I just want to bench press the most because it's cool. The better athlete is going to be like, if I need to do press ups on the rings and primal work for 3 years and never bench, but it's going to make me a better athlete, sweet, all good, don't care. Like I'll do it all day long, I think that's a massive difference. And especially if someone has that young, like not many kids really have that entering high school. And I think as well how you were saying kids are so in a rush. It's because when you're there in high school at that age, it's almost like that 5 years at high school was the start and the end. And so you think if I haven't cracked it by the time I'm seventh form, like what am I going to do? But really, you realize you're not even a man when you finish high school, and you've got so much else to do. But it's that little 5 year block. And so when Mr. Younger says to you, look, we're going to get you doing this for the first 3 years before you even touch a compound, you're kind of like, I don't really have time to do that. I'm just gonna like rush, rather than being like a lot of us down the track. We did all this lifting, and then as we actually are becoming young adults, then we have to do all this groundwork to catch up and problem solve our niggles and figure out how to develop proper movement patterns and all that. So I think you're eliminating so much like trial and error, but also like backpedaling when they get down the track.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I think, yeah, the other thing I think we're really trying to get across to these boys is when we are trying these new things, and we're looking to see how boys deal with that and I guess react and stuff. And like we do a lot of coaching. We try and get as much hands-on time as we can, especially with the classes that we've got now in school. Where boys get like that's a privilege in our eyes. Like boys get to have a period in their day where they get to go into the gym and they get to work on their craft, or they get to go out and do skills with their coach. So, for example, the first 11 coach, football coach at school, who's also the director of football, his experience, his CV in football goes a very long way back. Like he's an incredible asset to our football program. And we get boys who are year 9 who get to come into our school and get a period a week where they get to go and spend an hour on the football field with this coach. It's such a privilege. And so we look at, I guess, we're trying to teach, I guess, our young fellas the importance of coachability. And what was really interesting was the head S&C coach's son just got selected in the New Zealand under 16s to go to El Salvador for surfing in a couple of months. And one of the criteria that NZ Surfing put out to all the surfers who were trialing and trying to perform to get into the team was we look at and we put on a rating scale your coachability. And so if we don't think you're coachable, we don't pick you, because we're not just here to take you over to perform for us. We want to develop you. Why we've got you, so that you end up being an Olympic athlete for us, or be a world champion for us down the track as well. So yeah, just getting guys to, we're open-minded and making sure our athletes are open-minded as well, and wanting to try things. And when they try things, give it their 100% as well, because if you try something 50%, it's never going to work, is it?
For sure. So how do you think, I guess one thing I want to talk about is how did you end up even deciding to study exercise science and end up placed back at the school you are, and teaching, I guess, strength and conditioning or coaching S&C to the first 15 as part of your teaching role?
Yeah, so you know the story well enough. So we were at high school, and I think seeing you as the older brother go through that journey in the gym, with you at the other end of thing with your weight loss, and then me being like the skinny run to the family and of my year group, it was like just a thing that you fell in love with. And it was also the gym became, at school for us in the hostel, like it became like a second home. And it's actually so cool being back there these days and seeing guys in there who just remind me of us, or like what our friend group who were in there with us were like. And so being able to, I guess, go from a skinny little run in the space of a couple of years, and not that it was anything impressive, but to be a year 12 in the first 15 and have a bit of muscle. And I also remember there was, at the end of year 12, like I'd been told by my coach, like, oh, you were too slow this year on the wing. So I went away and did some speed work, and then I came back at the start of year 13, and one of my measures for if I had got faster and done some beneficial work was I entered all the sprint races and the school athletics to start the year off. and I won the 400, the 200, and then came second to Melly Naholo and the Waisaki's little brother in the 100 meter. But for me, that was like, oh yeah, cool. Like if I can be one of the fastest in the school, then surely I've done something right. So yeah, to see that like training, it's guaranteed. Like if you give everything into training and everything into exercise and sport, like you almost guarantee yourself results a little bit. Like if you go in with a full heart and a full mind, like you're always going to reap some sort of benefit. So straight away, being able to go through high school and see what exercise and sport did for me, and through other facets, through friendships, through dealing with successes, through dealing with failures, through opportunities to go overseas. Like I got to go to America as a year 12 through sport. Like the windows and the opportunities that and the doors that sport and exercise opens up for you. It was something I fell in love with. And when I sat at the end of year 13 thinking, shit, what am I going to do with my life? That was kind of the first thing that came to my mind. So went and did my sport degree, then got to the end of my sport degree, and we've been lucky enough to do a bit of an internship with the New Zealand Police as a physical education officer, which brought through some awesome experiences, but that door just wasn't open at the time. And so my next question was, well, what do I want to do? What else do I want to do? And the first thing that came to my mind was teaching. And I think you know the same as well. Like we had such a wicked experience with our teachers and with our hostel masters and some people who are really important, I think, to us as growing up as young men and in that school setting. It was just hard not to want to kind of have a crack at that myself and give a little bit of that back as well. And I think, within the year I've been at teaching, I think I've already been able to do that a little bit, which is just a special thing, I think, to be able to do anyway. But and it's also it is an avenue for the strength and conditioning stuff as well. I'm able to do my sports science masters at the moment while I'm teaching, do the stuff with the first 15, and I mean there's opportunities to work with rep teams and work with higher up teams in that regard. But you actually dropped in at the start, like about working with not just getting stuck with one area within the strength and conditioning kind of industry. So being at Boys High, like last year I did about a 4 or 5 month block with the first 11 hockey team and learned some amazing stuff there, and just working with different athletes and trying different things with those kind of guys. I do a bit of work with individual athletes. And so, yeah. And, if I want to go work with the cricket guys for 6 months, I can put my hand up and go, yeah, I'll take them for 6 months. Or Payne wants the rugby guys and he wants to do something, he's happy to take them. Or, we're so fluid like that. And I think being able to work with that many different athletes and just have them at the, right in front of me like that, it's super, super important, I guess, for my development.
So you're not married to one sport, but if you like long term down the track, if you ended up coaching a team or an individual for a sport, are you going to prefer it to be rugby, or you're actually not that phased?
Nah, not at all. Like I'm super. I mean, at the moment, like I'm my role as the head strength and conditioning coach for the first team rugby team. Like that's probably my main one at the moment. But again, if I want to add stuff to my plate, because I can, like I will. But I'm super open minded. And I mean, yeah, I'd love to one day down the track work with obviously some sort of New Zealand representative team. And that's certainly no way I'm limiting that to just being the All Blacks or whatever. Like, I mean, we've got some amazing teams in the country at the moment, but also as well, there's some amazing teams around the world in different comps, whether you look at the NBA, you look at the NFL, you look at French sports, the European leagues, soccer leagues, all that kind of stuff. There's so many different, realms of athletes around the world that you could work with. And the thing is, for me, I think you've just the industry at that point. If you don't have the qualifications to kind of back yourself up, they don't really look at you. So certainly a bit of a motivator with the Masters, I think. But yeah.
So it sounds like you're definitely more keen on team sports though, or like you like that environment.
I think team sports, and that's probably because I think that's where I spent the most of my time growing up was in team sports. Obviously chucked the tennis and stuff in pretty early compared to sticking with rugby and playing a lot of other sports as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't work with individual athletes, but I think, yeah, the team sports is probably where I'm developing most of my skills
Mm.
as well.
So, what's it been like? Because you obviously played like rep rugby in your time at uni, and like were like getting pretty heavily into athletics when you're at school. What is it like being transferring from growing up playing heaps of sports, being the athlete or the trainee, and then now becoming a coach and a trainer, and I guess taking a back seat in your own training, your own sporting endeavors, obviously due to heaps of things like work, but also injuries. Like, what's it been like not being the trainee so much and now being the trainer?
I actually just love being able to tell the boys like, or the students like what not to do.
Yeah.
Like, because I say to them, I was like, look, if I got it right, I'd be a professional athlete right now.
Mm.
And they kind of look at me and again, yeah, one of the guys at school gives me so much shit for this because he remembers walking in the gym and seeing me in there and stuff like that. And like I was trying to be a first team athlete at high school. Yeah, I'd go to the gym and I'd do bicep curls, I'd do tricep
Mm.
dips, I'd do eccentric
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that. Um, and I walked to the gym the other day, literally the other day, and this kid who's trying to be in the first team this year is year 11, and he's doing a bicep workout.
Mm.
I went up to him, I slapped on the back, and I was like, mate, I was like, big biceps ain't going to get you a first 15 jersey.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, and he kind of looked at me and I was like, mate, if you're not powerful, if you're not fast, if you're not strong, I was like, yeah, you're gonna have no luck. I was like, looking good. I was like, it's not going to get you there.
Mm.
And I said, I was like, that was me. And I think we were talking about the bench press as well. Like as a year 10, when I first kind of fell in love with the fact, oh yeah, cool, I've got to train to get better and this kind of stuff. Like I got on the bench press and I benched and benched and benched. And again, as you're fully well aware, when I was year 13, I dislocated my shoulder. And that was it. Like it was. There's no. I can look back and say 100%. It was the fact that I did no foundational work with my joints
Mm.
as a young fella. Didn't develop any sort of stability around my shoulder. Didn't do any accommodated load stuff. Didn't progress my body through the movement and towards that end goal like I should have.
Mm.
And so by the time I was a year 13, I had these jack shoulders, I had a good looking chest, and I could bench 120 odd kegs or whatever it was. But then I went to try and be mobile and it just gave way. And so that is, again, it's another awesome talking point. Like I can sit down with athletes and be like, look, I was like, I've given you this, but here you are on the bench press. If you want to be, if you want to just be working a normal, like, or a non-professional athlete job, and you want to have pain in your body when you're my age, which isn't very old, obviously,
Mm.
I was like, just keep doing what you're doing and ignore what we're telling you to do, kind of thing. And I think those real stories make it a bit more real for them rather than just me saying, oh, you shouldn't do this just because I can say to them, I've been through this. I had a crack and this is what I got wrong, or this is what I should have done or could have done better. And so I'd suggest that you do that as well. And it really does work and it helps. Like
Mm.
I'm glad I was able to have some hiccups along the way as a young fella that have kind of, I think it probably enhanced my ability to work with those youth athletes.
Mm. So you definitely subscribe to the idea that for like a high performance, there's also like a penance or a debt to pay in the sense that if you're going to perform to a really high level, it's gonna cause stress on your body. It's gonna cause damage, and you have to pay that penance and that debt by stabilizing your joints, doing the recovery work, eating well. Otherwise, like it all comes crumbling down.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, you're bang on, and like we just harp on and on and on to our boys about
Mm.
spending the time looking after your body. Like, what are you doing to actually look after your body? And they go,
Mm.
oh, well, yeah, I'm getting stronger. It's like, no. Like, how are you making sure your joints are mobile? You've got full range of motion. You've got good flexibility in your muscles. How are we strengthening? Especially like a lot of our boys are doing, high velocity sprinting
Mm.
a lot. They're doing a lot of sprinting. So it's like, how are we looking after those muscles, fellas? Like,
Mm.
we're constantly putting them under stress. So what are you doing to actually look after them. And we're investing a lot of time and a lot of money at the moment in our facility and into our protocols around recovery and mobility and things like that. And we've invested in some things that hopefully going to pay dividends for our boys. So I think I've talked about the stick mobility stuff. So we invested in some stick mobility, which have been pretty wicked so far, as well as some hot and cold stuff, which we're kind of working on at the moment, which hopefully up and running come winter code season. So yeah, you can't do all that lifting without all the other stuff as well. It's got the full package.
So, what area do you think secondary school athletes across the board are paying the less attention to detail to? Training, nutrition, or recovery?
It's a branch of training and it's skills.
Right.
It's fundamental skills. We're having this issue at the moment with rugby players coming through who just can't pass. And it's just
Really?
like, yeah, and even as year 12s and 13s, we've got guys who can't pass off both hands. It's just like this is fundamental to your sport. Like the gym stuff, yeah, that's important, but if you can't pass and pass quickly off both hands, no one wants you.
Yeah.
And simple things like you get a group of rugby players together and you ask them to walk up and down the field for 20 minutes just passing, a couple of meters apart, they're going to get bored after a minute. It's just like, you've got to do this over and over again. And like I said, it's been wicked having a couple of guys around who have been in, or just talking to a couple of guys recently who are in the professional sport industry at the moment as athletes. And they say, like, that's half of what they do at their trainings is just pass or just kick or just it's the little stuff, or they'll just go on there, they'll be on their knees and they'll just tackle for 20 minutes. It's just repetitive because that's all it is. They're fundamental, they're basic skills, but guys still fail to get them wrong. And I asked the rugby guys at the time, what does your week look like? And they'll go, oh yeah, gym Monday, conditioning Tuesday, blah blah blah. I'm like, where's your skills? Did you go and do an hour or two of skills like throughout the week? Oh no, because we do that on our field trainings on a Tuesday. It's just like, yeah, but outside that on your own, like you're a halfback, why aren't you going and passing for an hour or two and just perfecting that pass? Like it's boys don't do it. Our hockey boys are actually good. They get the turf on their own time, and you just see them just working on their skills with the ball. But other than that, boys don't go and do their skill work. They just want to live in the gym.
That's so interesting because we just were talking about how like the S&C training's advanced so much, but then here you are as the S&C trainer, and you're saying the number one thing they neglect is the actual skills for their sport.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, and again, I just don't understand how boys. Yeah, it's just whether it's a maturity thing or like you were talking about before, like it's like they think they don't have time, like, or that they it's just like a real naive thing that like, oh yeah, passing so easy, for example, like, I'm using passing as an example, passing so easy, of my passing's fine, like it's all good, but again,
because a rational way of thinking would be like, if I want to be a professional athlete in the sport, this is a clear area. My coach has even said that most people are neglecting, and I can see most people neglecting it. I should just go and really like hammer that, and that's a massive advantage I'm going to have over people, and it's an area I can beat people that are maybe more gifted than me on.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much, and I mean, I've certainly kind of been strategic to try and get boys better at this. So when I've especially moving forward, when our first team squad gets named, like I'll be taking balls and stuff into our gym sessions, and so when boys are resting between sets, like they should be passing, they should be kicking, they should be hookers, should be practicing some throws, all that kind of stuff. Like it should just be, I mean, it should be stuff they do all the time, because without it, they're not going to be picked up.
Yeah, I don't know if there's one thing you agree with, but from what I understand, that's one thing with like team sports compared to individual sports or more extreme sports like bodybuilding or combat sports or Olympic track and field, is the culture of those sports seems to be people really try and get every ounce of water out of the sponge as possible. where the team sports, because it is a team sport, like it's probably a little bit easier to become a professional in a team sport like rugby than especially something like bodybuilding or combat sports. Like it's a lot easier to make a living. And so I just sometimes don't see the urgency to get as much out of every single skill, every single avenue of training, every single aspect of recovery as there like is in those, I guess, more extreme or more disciplined sports because of the competitive nature of it. Because it's like, for example, even we talked about this earlier, like the culture in the team sports, especially rugby, with like drinking. And some of those other sports, that's just not even really a thing because if you did any of that, you're not even
You eliminate
consider
yourself
yeah,
away.
yeah, you're straight out, you know.
Yeah.
So do you
Oh,
think essentially that like there's just a little bit of a lack of people wanting to get the most out of every aspect they can, you know?
yeah, and I think again some of the athletes think that what they do as a team is enough.
Mm,
Like turning up on a Tuesday and doing one drill with your coaches on passing, one with tackling, one with kicking, whatever it is, and then doing a team run on a Thursday, whatever it is, like that's enough. Where, yeah, you look at tennis players, they'll go and serve balls 5 times a week
mm,
for an hour, and then the second hour they'll, for half an hour they'll do their forehand and their backhand, and like that craft is yeah so much more refined. Um, and I mean, again, it's another conversation I get to have with my boys because I look back at how my training was, and like I think I only used to do some skill work when I was doing my own training, like maybe once every couple of weeks. I'd just
mm,
maybe remind myself, oh, I'll go do some kicking or something for half an hour or something, and at that stage of your skill development, that's not enough. Like
mm,
it's not even 0.1 of enough. Like it's so much time to perfect, to master. Again, it's that word mastery. Skill mastery doesn't come around in the blink of an eye, that's for sure.
mm,
So yeah, totally. Like it's I said to the boys, must not have been too long ago either. Like I spent so much time in the gym with that shoulder thing. Like I developed my hypertrophy, I developed my strength, and developed my power, but I didn't squeeze anything out of like functional movement or out of flexibility or mobility or proprioception. Did nothing. Didn't even. And if I had, gee, I wonder how much more stronger or powerful or how much more muscle I could have built
mm,
if I had done those things as well. Because there's a flow-on effect with everything, I think, in training. Like it's such a holistic, rounded thing. As
mm,
soon as you leave one piece of the puzzle out, you, I guess, limit the integrity of the rest of it.
mm. So following on from that, how much weight or like stock, I guess we'll talk about it in terms of the team sports and specifically the ones you're coaching or have coached like rugby and hockey and all those sorts of things. How much stock do you put into genetics and natural talent and just people's, I guess, biomechanics they've been born with?
Yeah, right. Like, you'd remember, straight off the top of your bat, you'd remember some names from when we were at school who
Mm,
they turn up and they're just like this pristine athlete just because they were born that way.
mm,
And it's just like, holy damn, you are going to go places. And then you watch them in the gym and they don't know how to work.
mm,
Or you watch them on Saturday game day and they don't know how to actually get focused and be in the moment or stuff like that. Or you watch them bring their lunch to school and it's just shit. Or,
mm,
um, you know, and straight away, and we're really open with those athletes, like
mm,
and I try to be as well. Kane's really good at it, David Bowler's really good at it. If an athlete's got all the talent in the world but they're useless in a bunch of other areas, we just call them out and just say, hey,
mm,
look, mate, you're not going to go anywhere. Like we will tell them, like, you're not going to go anywhere. We know you think you do because you're currently the best in the school at the sport, but it's going to let you down eventually.
mm.
um,
And what's the response you usually get to that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes obviously you get boys who, I mean, we've got a couple of basketballs at the moment who are currently going through that change, which has been really cool. And then some boys obviously just ignore it because they're happy doing what they're doing. And it's the old, what we call it at school is the curse of the early developer.
Right.
They turn up as a year 9 and they look like they're a year 12, year 13. And then by the time they're year 12 and they've done no training because they haven't had to, everyone else is caught up and I've done the training. And all of a sudden, this person who was, the next big thing is a year 9 or 10, they're not even in the picture. But again, with what we're doing at school, with that ADP program and educating guys, like I walked into one of Kane's ADP classes in the last year, and he was it was almost like a lecture, like a motivational lecture around the need to work, like actually have a work ethic. So the boys got 50 minutes around, what does working look like? Why do we need to do the work? And those discussions can be the difference for someone who's an early developer or someone who's got all the talent in the world. So the sooner you get that message across, I think the more chance you give those guys the chance. But it's certainly real. Like guys are blessed with awesome coordination. The ability to grow muscle, I think, is just there for some guys compared to others. Not to excuse the guys at the other end though, and say that you're completely out of the picture. There's no way. It just means that you're going to actually have to really work for this, which I always prefer at the end of the day anyway, because if those guys get there, that they know how to work, if you know what I mean.
Do you see many kids who have both, I guess, aspects covered, so they do have the work ethic, but they also are naturally talented?
Yeah, bro. Yeah, we've got a kid at the moment who comes to mind at the school who I've never seen work ethic like it on a young fella. Like it's almost scary. We actually have had to have conversations with this kid around
resting,
slowing down and actually recovering. Like he doesn't understand the fact that your body needs a chance to just take a breath and chill out. Like, for example,
what sports he plays? Right.
So he's a year 11, and absolutely, I beasted the first 15 squad like a week or two ago, at 6 o'clock in the morning for about 45 minutes. Like they ran and they ran and they ran, and then he had a subject period 2 or 3 that day where he called APAT, which is for seniors to do it's kind of sports studies for a lot of people know sports studies, and he chose to do he had a free period to do a gym session. And so he absolutely went and smashed a gym session in the gym. And then later that night, one of the hostel masters went down to lock the gym, and he's down there doing another workout. And like they came and told us, and I just sat down the next day, and I was like, dude, you're gonna blow out. Like it's
is he a hostel boy?
Yeah,
right.
And really good dude, but also his on the field, like his skills are awesome. His defense is absolutely a machine on defense, and he's going to go a long way based off that. But the way he's going to limit himself if he doesn't understand the concept of looking after your body.
Yeah, because that's then is for your coaches, but also him. He's going to have to learn that's another problem to solve, and that's like what I said before about the absolute best athletes are the ones who will do whatever it takes to just be better at the sport. And it's like for me, for example, like I've probably hindered my own progress because I spent way more time training, doing way more volume than I needed to. And if rather than just being in the gym as long as I wanted to, because that's what I loved and I enjoyed, and I strip that back and be like, it's the whole like pick the lowest hanging fruit, and rather than working as hard as possible, you need to do as less work as possible to get the desired result. Because when you're talking about athletes as well, as most good athletes, they're not lazy people, right? So the problem is not going to be getting them to work. If they're in that realm already, often it's actually pulling them back and becoming more efficient. And that I see this with the combat guys so much. Like honestly, 90% of any combat athletes, they're the same as this boy you're talking about. They can just go. They will train for 3 hours a day and no problem, and they love it. But they're performing at like 60-70% of what they're actually capable of, because they're always running a massive calorie deficit, they're always overtrained, their central nervous system's fried, and then that's why a lot of these guys, even though they're doing more hours or working harder than other people, they go in and in a competitive setting, they'll just get thrashed.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's it's a tricky one with these young fellas, is because they're some of them are just so excited, and they when they're grasping the stuff that you're giving to them, and really getting stuck into it, and they're enjoying it, and then all of a sudden you've got to tell them as well, like we're promoting to them how important it is to work hard and be consistent, that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden you tell them, oh hey, look, we've got to slow down. That's quite a confusing concept for them a little bit. But I mean, without it, if we don't get that kind of stuff right, and the boys aren't actually giving the central nervous system a chance to reset, or just even just from a psychological point of view, like if we burn these guys out, we've done a massive disservice.
So what's it like coaching these boys? Because it's like, especially as you become a senior, it's often just a weird time in your life. So what's it like coaching these boys through, I guess, like adolescence, puberty, and also like even just like getting into partying or like socializing, or obviously some of them end up having like relationships that can go good or can go bad. Because obviously all these things have got to provide barriers as a coach. I guess you're at a little bit of an advantage because you have been that age so recently, but obviously haven't gone through everything you're having to coach these boys through. So how much of a challenge do those things provide in like your job?
I wouldn't.
Like, have you taken on a role as a bit of a, because for example, as a trainer, like, to be honest, it's pretty good for me because of the type of brand and client base I run. But for example, for trainers and gyms, a massive like thing that they have to get around is a lot of people just end up venting to them, and rather than being a trainer, they'll end up becoming like a life coach or an emotional punching bag, whether it's positive or negative. Like, there can be both, but as a coach, do you get much of that? Have you become, even in a positive way, like a mentor at all? Do people like come and relay what's going on in their day to day to you, and does it affect their performance,
I think like boys, because I'm at a boys' school and I'm working with only male athletes. Again, you know what it's like being a young fella. Like, we don't say a lot, do we? Like, you don't often go pouring your heart out to your, even your mates. Like, it's not something you do very often, and obviously us as Kiwis we're trying to get better at. But I've certainly already experienced issues with players and personal issues affecting their performance, their attendance at school, their training, everything, and it's come in the form of breakups, and it's so funny, well, not funny, but it's interesting how young fellas at that age, they see those breakups as it's the end of the world at the time. And you just got to wait for the right moment. And I had a conversation with a young fella, because some boys, it got to the point where they were able to kiss this guy some shit about it. And it was at training, and I just made some passing comments about the old there's plenty of fish in the sea kind of thing, and I think you kind of see them kind of lighten up when you hear it coming from an adult a little bit, or I guess you could call me an adult, but it certainly can play a part in the conversations we have these days with our athletes around how stressful things can be for young guys these days, because it's so. I mean, we certainly obviously got a touch of it, but if you go back 20 years, half of the things our youth athletes are dealing with off the field weren't even a thing, and weren't even around. So there's a lot at play, and you certainly see certain boys and certain players go up and down on a bit of a roller coaster at times, and it's just about having like an understanding, just being like the sport's not everything for all these guys, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on at young fellas' homes, and um, I was lucky enough before I got into teaching to do about a couple of months stint where I was working with boys who had issues going on at home, which was affecting their attendance at school. So I actually went to a few homes, and that just opened my eyes massively to, as soon as a boy steps through the school gates every morning, like for some of them, it's the safest place for them, it's the best place for them, and you just have no clue what's going on at home for them.
Yeah.
So
Do you think, as a whole, um, boys are more like in terms of partying? Even do you think boys are more focused nowadays, or that culture's not? Because to be honest, when I was at high school, like pretty much everyone didn't think like partying was going to take away, like they didn't think partying or like drinking heavily would be the difference between becoming a professional athlete or not. And so it was prevalent in all the sports, I'd probably say. Is that different now?
mm, no, I think in a team sport, you've got you like any team. You pick any team in the school, you pick any team in the world, probably. You've got the guys who understand and probably avoid alcohol or avoid the partying or avoid certain thing, and then you've got the guys who are just not as fussed about it, and who want to get stuck into that kind of thing. And for us in our setting, like we can't, I can't stop a kid or a group of boys from the
Mm.
first 15, for example. I can't stop them if they're going to go out and get on the piss on the weekend. Like I just can't. It's just I'm not their parent. I'm I'm just their coach, if you know what I mean. So
Mm.
we can discuss, we can have those discussions, and we can talk about those things. But at the end of the day, we live in a society here in New Zealand where that's somewhat the norm, especially in the rugby setting. Like for a lot of people, that's what you do. You play footy on a Saturday, then you go out and have a few too many beers, and do it all again the next week. And it's you got to. I think there's got to be some point with these athletes of ours where you sit back and let them make their own decisions and their own, well, if mistakes, if you want to call it mistakes. But because again, at the end of the day, guys are going to look back when they're even at our age and go, "Oh, if I hadn't have done that." And then you're going to go at the guys who have worked it out and said, "Look, I knew it wasn't going to be the beneficial for me in my journey to get to where I wanted to be," and that's what I did. But you're also going to get guys who probably do stick with that usual culture and still kind of crack it, because that's just
The way it
the
is.
nature of it a little bit.
Do you feel a little bit more responsible or I mean, do you feel like you have to carry yourself to a little bit of a higher standard now that you're going to have an influence over some of these like younger boys?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm certainly no perfect human in terms of having some beers, or
Mm.
even my training can alter at times and things like that. But
Mm.
in terms of trying to be, I guess, the best version of myself, I think that's probably how I see it. Like if I'm trying to, if I'm always trying to better myself, like I'm hoping the boys will see that and follow that kind of suit, if you know what I mean. So because everyone's different, but if everyone's trying to better themselves and where they're currently at, I think that's probably a bit of a win. But yeah, it's certainly a conscious effort to um, role model to these boys what things should look like. And then, for example, before I roll out a new training program with my first team boys, I do it myself, and I'll record how long it takes, my heart rate, and all that kind of stuff, and show the boys that I wouldn't do anything, or I wouldn't roll anything out to them that I haven't done myself, or I couldn't do myself, or
Mm.
you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. So before I let you go, I'm just going to roll through some quick fire questions. So what would your last meal be if you're on death row?
I've had a similar conversation about this recently. Actually, it did have to be mum's roast, man. Like, I don't think you could walk away from planet Earth without having that one more time.
Yeah. What about dessert wise?
I'm in a state at the moment. Obviously, now that I'm dairy free these days and gluten free, I don't really have anything that fizzes me up that much. But if we ignore the dairy free thing, geez, I don't know. I don't actually know if I'm that much of a dessert man. I don't know, maybe like a cheesecake, something like that, or maybe just biscuits. I just
Yeah,
smash
biscuits.
biscuit.
What's your top training song if you had to pick one?
Top training song. Geez, good question. Have to be something along the lines of just like probably more if we're talking artist wise, like but ACDC at the moment. Like
Oh
I've
yeah,
just
no,
busy with
nice.
them a little bit.
In your opinion, who's the greatest athlete of all time?
Oh dear me, greatest athlete of
Someone,
all
do you know
time.
what? Someone the other day, it was some fighters on this podcast I watched, and he was reckoned someone had told him they thought Bruce Lee was the greatest athlete of all time, and I was like, he's not even an athlete, but
Yeah. That's I mean that's such a tough one. I mean, some would have to argue that currently at the moment it might have to even be Tom Brady after coming out of retirement after
mm,
3 months on the bench. But I mean, look, you can't go away. I think sometimes from someone like Floyd Mayweather and
mm.
like him. I think I'm to see to see what he did for so long and just his level of performance. But
I think the fact with him, he didn't lose. Like that's the
yeah,
I mean, as an amateur, he lost, but to have 50 professional fights, boxing fight, premier boxing fights, and fight the list of people he did and never lose over that span of time. Because
yeah.
most people say Michael Jordan, and like I'm a bit biased because I'm not a massive basketball fan, but like especially in a combat setting as well, like it's just yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're talking in different realms when you start talking about team athletes compared to individual athletes as well, which we've already
Mm,
discussed. Obviously, like you know Michael Jordan, yeah, unreal basketball player, and did obviously some amazing things in a team setting as well as obviously on his own while he was playing. But he had wicked guys around him and things like that as well, which helps. Where Mayweather on his own doing his thing. So yeah.
good call. Your favorite movie?
Oh yeah, we've already discussed this, mate. The Batman, all the Christian Bale Batmans for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's pretty because you watched a new one, eh?
Yeah, it just wasn't it for me, eh? Like I just um yeah, some people are gonna probably say no, it was I mean the cinematic side of things, like yeah, they did some really cool stuff in that regard and the storyline was quite cool, but
Mm.
um I'm just too biased. Like I'm just Christian Bale's just the man and those movies are just all three of them were unreal.
I think as well, like when the like Christopher Nolan series with Christian Bale came out, everyone was kind of, if I remember correctly at the time, everyone was kind of bagging it because they'd just come off like the George Clooney Batman, which was real shit, and it had been done so many times, so everyone was like, "Oh, this isn't going to be any good." And then it was like awesome, so that everyone was like, "It's the best ever." And then this new one is everyone was kind of talking it up a little bit, like it was going to be great,
Mm,
um, because everyone was like, "Oh, it's not going to match," but then everyone was like, "Oh no, like Robert Pattinson's real good," rah, rah, rah. And then it just didn't like. It was always going to be a hard ask.
yeah.
Um, And I think, yeah, him, that's what I saw from the reviews. I haven't seen it, but everyone said he was okay as Batman, a little bit small. But they said that he was a horrible Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, just a little bit too emo boy.
Well,
But
it said, people said he pretty much acted the same for both, which that's like
yeah,
not the go. Like they're supposed to be a little bit different,
I mean,
obviously.
Bruce Wayne's got to have that arrogancy about him and that kind of rich boy just doesn't give a shit kind of thing. So,
Yeah. And then lastly, one piece of advice you would give your 10-year-old self.
oh, that's an interesting one. 10-year-old self.
Even it could
Oh,
be around just like sport and
yeah.
training and stuff.
Yeah, nah, it'd have to be what I talked to someone about this the other day around just not act like just stop giving a shit about what other people think. Like I think
Yeah.
it's one thing I can go back to the boys at school at the moment. Like they get so worried about what the other boys will think, or what
Mm.
people will think online if they do a certain thing, or and that, yeah, that was certainly something growing up that, yeah, I remember worrying about a lot. Was just like, oh, what are people going to think if I do this, or if this goes wrong, or so. Yeah, if you just to ignore that kind of that vibe of, yeah, what will they think, because it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, I don't think.
Mm. Nice. Well, all right. Well, thank you very much for jumping on for a chat, mate. I hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah, no,
We've ended up going almost an hour and a half, so that was a good big yarn. But yeah, hopefully you get out of ISO all good and crack back
yeah,
into
man,
work, and then
I'm sure if the podcast keeps firing, I'm sure I'll get back on here at some point when things keep kicking off. And yeah, big season coming up for the first team, boys. Got some things that have hopefully going to pay off in terms of our training, and some new things that we're trying, that we're kind of keeping under wraps. And
mm,
um, yeah, keep chipping away at life, and you do the same down there. We might see you up here soon.
nice. All right. Well, you have a
Cool,
good
bro.
one, and I'll leave you to it. Keep well.
Sweet, mate.
All
Cool.
right. Later.
See you later.